go back to the evening for this dangerous order, November 2017. And there's discrepancies between times between the complainant and the defendant. One says 9-ish, the other says 10-ish. My question to you, Ms. Hollander, was when you were letting your dog out to relieve himself, you said that you had a malfunction of the leash. Did you ever lose sight of the dog Jackson from the time he left your house to the time that he allegedly made it to the lamb's
I did not
house?
lose sight of him.
Okay. Either at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, you never lost sight of your dog.
I know it
Is this a well-lit street?
I know it specifically happened at...
Is this a well-lit street, Ms. Hollander?
It is a pretty well lit.
So you would say that over 100 feet you were able to see your dog the whole time and never lost sight of him. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So I know it happened at... I was trying to get to sleep early that night. So I remember it was like 10:15 at night and my dog was nudging my foot. And I was looking at the time and I was thinking, oh, can I wait? Yes, no? I specifically remember it was like 10:15 and it happened really quick. And I don't think that he was leaving and I think he's still upset with the lawsuit, so it was just his last, I don't like the Hollanders, I'm gonna take it out on Allie. I wish I would have pursued it last time.
So what you're saying is you never lost sight of your dog, and at that point in time you saw the lambs and your dog together when you made a visual.
I didn't see them together. I just saw that Jackson was off the leash. I said, come back, and they were very loud.
Okay.
You were pursuing your dog after you lost control of the dog, correct?
He came right back, and I had to...
Right, but you would have, had he entered the garage, you would have seen that, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the garage light was on, is that correct?
The garage door was open, and the light was on, and they were making a lot of noise.
And you can easily see that from your residence, is that correct?
Not from inside my house, but
But if you're outside your house?
I can see it like if I was looking at that tree over there. Like I can kind of see it. I can't see what's in the garage, but I can see that the door's open.
Right.
And I could hear, they were being a little loud.
But we're talking about the incident itself, and you testified that you were outside when this happened.
Correct.
Yes.
And viewed the dog in its
That's
Yes,
what I was...
because I was on the
Okay.
street when I was attaching the leash, and then it didn't attach because it was like, so let's say this is the...
Okay, you don't need to get in,
Okay.
it just didn't attach.
It didn't attach, and I was like, he ran up, went to the bathroom, Jackson, but they were screaming when they saw Jackson off the leash. I don't know if they were drinking or what.
But you also said the distance between your house and the place where the dog relieved himself was, beyond their garage, and he went...
Just
and-
like a little, it's adjacent to it's a little park on
Right.
Fleet Street adjacent to their garage.
I'm just trying to understand, because
Oh.
you said, based on your lawyer's questions, that it was 40 to 50 seconds, and then you
It was.
also said 10 to 20 seconds.
It was
And I'm just trying to
such a
picture...
short amount of seconds.
I'm just trying to picture how dog got loose, ran to this park, relieved himself, and came all the way back to you in 10 to 20 seconds. That just...
It was pretty fast.
Is that a particular area that the dog is familiar with in
Yeah.
terms of really?
All the
So it's not
dogs are
unusual,
back.
all the dogs were?
Yeah.
Okay, and you had eyesight of the dog as it left your control?
Yes.
To the point that it went over to the park, to the point that it came
Yes,
back?
I
is
didn't
that correct?
time it, but
Well,
it's very
right, I
fast.
understand. You guesstimated, just like Dave guesstimated on 50 or 60. It could have been longer than that, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, you didn't have a stopwatch, you didn't go out there
And
and
he's
time?
never snarled or growled at anybody.
Okay, but on this date, he clearly did not do that, is that correct?
He did not do that.
And if he did, you would have seen it?
I would have seen it, and he's never done that.
So you're, in summary then, what you're saying is, you took him out to relieve himself at sometime between 9 and 10 in the evening,
It was kind of
9 to 11 in the evening, and your clip malfunctioned, he got loose.
Exactly.
You saw him run directly from where you lost contact with the pet, running at large down to the park on the other side of the Lamb's garage, relieve himself, and then run back to you.
That's correct.
And you saw absolutely no interaction with the Lambs at any form or fashion,
That's correct.
Miss Lamb coming out and just yelling and screaming for no apparent reason.
I believe actually you said she said bad dog at
I
some
heard her
point.
say bad dog. Jackson was off the leash, that's correct.
She didn't say, she heard her screaming, she heard her say, bad dog.
But you didn't see her at all. You just heard her.
I did not see her run towards me. I didn't see her.
Was she physically outside of the garage at all?
I didn't see her outside the garage. Did you have a chance to look over the affidavits?
Now, I just want to be clear, because I have a contractor here who's dealt with a dog on 60 occasions as it relates to his propensity for violence. I have my client's mother, I have my client's father, who can testify as to the dog's propensity for violence, whether they've ever witnessed it, corroborating the affidavits that you've seen as well. I just don't want to go off onto a tangent that the commission doesn't want to hear from.
And I also have videotape
Wait, hold on,
of
we
people
didn't
named
answer
Jackson.
Yeah, it's,
I don't know.
I leave it up to my fellow commissioners to decide how much they want to hear, how little they want to hear. Larry?
Please feel free to ask.
I've been listening and trying to make heads or tails of this. If this dog left his resident, Jackson, and ran down the street to the next house, based on what we have written, even if whether he bit someone or not, this dog is considered as a dangerous animal, according to what I'm reading. I don't have the guidelines. Do you have it?
That's not consistent with the law, and I can read you the law.
well, Tiffany, do
Under
you
section
have it?
10-619, it says a dangerous dog, if I could assist you.
Yeah.
It says without provocation has killed or inflicted severe injury on a person. That doesn't fall within this category.
But there's another line.
And it says, under these facts, because this is what I understand the doctor has told us, we're talking about the facts of this case. Bites a person, there's absolutely no evidence the dog bit anyone.
That's vicious.
No, this is the definition under 10-619 of the Maryland criminal law, which is what we're here for. This is a characterization that the dog is a dangerous dog. In order to find that, you have to determine that he meets one of the parameters of 10-619. That's what the law requires. So merely saying that the dog's at large does not meet the definition of a dangerous dog.
But the law changed September
7th.
September
It's under the
7th.
county code now.
It's county code.
I have
and
the
that's-
county code.
Well, then,
It adopts the criminal law as well.
You know, it does. I'm sure it's incorporated in there.
It's exactly right.
But the definition of dangerous has been redone essentially. And so what used to be a potentially dangerous dog is now a dangerous dog and approaching somebody in a manner of attack.
I don't disagree, and I was going to go through that definition as well.
I'm just
which-
saying, and that's, you know,
That's what I'm saying.
I don't think anyone here is going to dispute the fact that Jackson probably did not bite anybody on November 13th. The question is, what we're here to really address, and really the focal point here is, did Jackson, being at large, approach the lambs in a manner of attack?
I agree with you.
That's
But
what
merely
we have
being
to
off a
address.
leash does not meet the definition of a dangerous dog. That's what was suggested, and that was my response. I was just going through the definition, which doesn't include a dog simply being off leash.
True.
So that we're not making a determination he's a dangerous dog predicated on her testimony that she said the dog was off leash.
No, I understand that, but to approach in a manner of attack, they're generally off leash. They're off
Well,
leash.
it could be, but I agree with you, but that's a question of factual dispute as to what really transpired. That's her perspective.
Well, wait a minute. We know the dog was off leash.
We do. I agree with
We have
that.
to agree with that. The question now that we have to address and what we need to hear testimony on is, did this dog attack the lambs or approach the lambs in an attitude of attack?
I agree.
That's what we
If we
need
were
to
to
address.
synthesize this, I agree with you. That is the fundamental issue. We're not in disagreement about it.
Okay.
But she's testified that never happened. They testified it happened. There's not a single witness other than these two individuals who have said that that happened. Not a neighbor that was disturbed, not a photograph to prove any of that. That's their position, with a significant amount of prior hostilities between the parties.
And we're aware, almost every case we see, there's
I'm sure
that
you
kind
do.
of hostility going on. We try and ferret that out, because truly what we have to look at is what I just said.
Right.
We're not arguing the dog was off lead. What we're arguing now, what we're discussing and need to determine is, did this dog approach the lambs in an attitude of attack?
I agree.
That's what we need to address.
I agree.
And I think you've summed it up succinctly, that, you know, Ms. Hollander saying, no, that didn't happen. I saw my dog from start to finish. And then the lambs are disputing that. And
That's
that's
right.
where we find ourselves today.
I guess my question is then, and that's why I posed this other question to you, is it relevant for me, for your consideration generally, for me to offer testimony from The contractor who's seen the dog 60 times before has never had a problem, and I'll proffer that, and you can certainly testify to that. And the mother and father who would testify that the dog's never done any of those things before. I recognize that doesn't prove or disprove whether he did or didn't do it on this occasion.
I understand that, and I'm comfortable believing that there's been at least one bite in this dog's history based on the photographic evidence that I've seen. And that's really, of all the information that you've given me in the affidavits, that I think is relevant in any case, and in my opinion, at any point. And really, I'm not even including that because we're not dealing with a bite here. We're actually dealing with is how this dog approached the lambs. And that's what I'm having a tough time hearing sufficient evidence on,
Well,
either for or against. That's where I'm stuck.
I guess my problem is if we're focusing on what happened here, the bite, I understand that you may argue, well, this shows the propensity for violence on behalf of the dog. The dog has a propensity to be aggressive. But the problem is that was never properly adjudicated. It's just an assumption because there's a photograph. We don't know any of the factual circumstances surrounding that because we're not here to litigate that issue. Because as you indicate, we were here for the November incident. But what I believe I'm hearing is that we're going to use that against him. Nonetheless, we're still going to use that against him.
I would suggest to you that I would probably look at that as that would balance out the evidence that you would present that the dog is a peace-loving, friendly dog. It would just balance it out. So as in my world, it's essentially a moot point. The dog, according to the lambs, has the potential to attack, and then according to the evidence that you've got, the dog is the best dog in the world. And that's fine.
Including from his vet.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine. But we're still at the matter at hand that we've not heard convincing evidence, at least I've not heard compelling evidence, one way or the other, that did this or did this dog not approach the lambs in an attitude of attack. That's where I'm having a problem.
I don't disagree, but the burden isn't on her. It's just to respond to this, other than to say, this is what I
understand.
Okay, so if you haven't heard convincing evidence, it seems to me that there hasn't been sufficient evidence to indicate that in fact it's been proven that the dog is a dangerous dog, because we have essentially two witnesses saying this happened, another witness saying it didn't happen, and I don't think that she's not a credible person. We have evidence that there's been a history between the parties. As you say, that's pretty common in these situations, not always rising to the level of litigation, withdrawing affidavits, things of that nature. So, I mean, that is the essence of where we stand.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So I feel that for the first incident, that was definitely not looked into. I feel like I should get affidavits from the people that are still working at the harbor master that remember the incident, and I feel like that first time was just very not fair, and this second time I feel it's very not fair because this is just not about me. It's about my brother. They're still in litigation, and it's being taken out on me. So sorry that I'm not right to the point, but
Officer Thomas, you wanted to say something earlier. Were you able to?
Yeah, I mean, just listening to everything, I mean, understanding the circumstances. The only thing is that I just wanted to verify that in a couple times in her testimony, she's changed the times multiple, went from 10:20 to 10:15 now, that the incident happened on the 13th. My concern is that, basically, when these bites came in, understanding that affidavits were filed and they were rescinded, understanding of what Mr. Lamb was doing, per under the county, or per under the state general health code, we still had to quarantine the dog. So we did, basically everything was done at home, she complied with all the conditions that were asked for that. A bite report was still taken, I have to, it is a state law. We did have the pictures from Mr. Lamb, basically stating that there was a bite, there were sutures, okay, so basically that's why there was just a warning was issued to that. Even though everything was rescinded, Animal Control was trying to make a correction and help her. On the first one of dealing with Mr. Don Wertbert, basically she left the scene. It was basically advised that she did. However, we still got the information and everything. He did submit a statement like he was asked.
I'm not trying to be difficult.
And actually,
she wasn't actually there, so she is relating hearsay upon hearsay. So it's really patently unfair because we're assuming, the commission's assuming, all of this is true. She wasn't even there. So she's telling she left the scene. How does she know she left the scene if she wasn't actually there? Because, I mean, she was there. So why is that accepted as evidence that's even remotely competent when she's taking this from third parties who haven't even appeared here today? And I realize we have relaxed rules, but that's taken as gospel, and I don't think that's fair.
My thoughts still, this is what I'm trying to, I keep dealing with my head here. I don't see why the complainants, who's Michelle and Peter,
Yes.
would find reasons to write up a report to bring us all here in court to find Jackson, to make up a story that Jackson didn't do anything.
I must say, he has an $18,000 lawsuit against Mr. Lamb, and he's taking it out on my
I'm
daughter.
object. I'm object. It has nothing to do with the
We're
dog.
back to, no, hold, no, we're back, whoa.
But
You-
this is
Back-
what
We
he
had an
took it
open
out.
admission that this dog was at large, at least, we can all agree on that. Okay, so at that point, we're gonna go from there. Okay, that lawsuit aside, the dog was at large on this date.
Yeah.
You're claiming you saw the dog, they're saying there's no way that could have happened because they're in the garage. So we need to get onto that, but
What could not have happened?
what's
What
that?
did you say could not have happened?
I didn't say anything could not have happened. I'm saying at this point, the only thing we know happened for sure is that your dog was running at large towards their house and was at least 100 feet away from what I understand the distance between him,
Right.
is what I got. So now we have to
Maybe a
base,
little bit less than 100.
Doesn't matter.
we're,
It was probably more like 50.
okay, now it's either or. But that's where we're at right now. The lawsuit aside, regardless, we're here because this dog was off leash and it got away at some point, and now we have two conflicting stories that now we have to go through. That's where we're at. Okay? The lawsuit aside, that we be here one way or the other due to that fact.
Well, the only reason we brought up the lawsuit is because Mr. Royster brought up the issue of what's the motivation. And that's why he brought it up. We didn't, I mean, we were responding to the question.
I
I can
understand that.
respond to that, by the way.
We'd be here.
Either of us could, and I think it's worth doing. I'm
Well, wait a
struggling
minute.
as I listen
I mean,
to.
Well, we're getting.
They brought it up, that's,
No,
we'd like to respond.
And I understand there is an issue going on between the parties. As we said earlier, as Mr. Berger pointed out very astutely, we understand all that. We understand the warning letters. We understand how you think they're unfair. We get that. We understand animal control didn't invest. We understand all that. What we have to decide this afternoon to make a recommendation to the chief of police is, did or did not Jackson approach the lambs in a manner and an attitude of attack? That's what we have to decide. You know, the lawsuit, the warning letters, the previous bite, at some level, it's all water under the bridge for what we need to decide today. Because that's all we're going to decide on today. We're not going to figure out your lawsuit. We're not going to go back and revisit the warning letters, which everybody seems to want to go back to. We need to figure out what exactly happened, and did or did not Jackson approach the lambs in a manner and attitude of attack?
To your point, could Peter add one piece of information?
I have an apology from Ally Hollander dated November 18th, after this incident happened.
Signed, Ally and Jackson.
I think we need to move on with the dangerous order in hand, because this is going to go back and forth.
Okay, do we have any new testimony before we, yes?
I have a witness that would like to speak.
You
Witness
said-
to what?
wait, Witness to what?
My dog, to Jackson.
To the event?
No, but to,
I'm sorry.
That's what they're saying. The
But he's a
commission is trying to,
he's a police
it
officer.
doesn't, what they're focusing in on is the issue of what happened this day, hence the reason why,
Okay.
as I understand it, Dr. Hemmer has indicated that the focus is the incident itself, not necessarily the other issues, along with the fact that we've given affidavits from people that would say that the dog is not a dog that has a propensity for violence. You
That is
understand?
correct, because you are here challenging
That's
the
correct.
order.
I do have a prepared statement that I'd like to read.
Okay, please go.
Well,
There's
I'm
been
not
an
trying to be difficult,
incredible
but I
amount
mean,
of...
They presented the case, the animal control presented it, they presented witnesses, I presented at least my position, and now we're back at a presentation of the case. So, I mean, when does it end?
Well,
If he's going to get into a prepared statement, then
this statement is
I
directly
should have the
relevant
right
to whether
call
this is
all
a
my other
dangerous
witnesses
animal or
and-
not.
Excuse me, sir, I'm not talking over you, I just want to be heard. All right,
Well,
so.
you interrupted.
Well, I have a job to do, and I just don't know where we end in this. My understanding was, he testified as to what happened. How is that prepared statement any different than his testimony he's already given?
I would agree. The question I asked a moment ago was, do we have any fresh testimony?
Right,
So that we can get to deliberations here.
Correct. That sounds like a prepared statement. Doesn't sound like fresh testimony. It sounds like a recitation of what we've already heard and/or additional information that he may feel is relevant. But he was already permitted to give a statement about what transpired. He gave it, and she gave it.
Chair, I think
I need fresh
we need to move
testimony.
forward on the dangerous order and make a motion at some point in time.
Say that again?
I think we need to make a motion.
Yes, I would agree, but I'm waiting to let them
Yeah.
I
complete their
need fresh-
testimony.
I need fresh testimony.
Yes.
I walk my dog, I live downtown, and if we were all to go downtown with my dog,
I'm gonna object, and here's why.
everybody loves my
Because
dog. He's not dangerous.
you don't
They've
wanna
raised
hear-
a
you-
tremendous amount of
Exactly. You don't
and
wanna
not
hear
given
what
me a
he
chance
has
to
to say,
respond.
but then you wanna
It doesn't
give
work
fresh
that way.
testimony. I think we need to
I
still
agree.
move forward.
I agree. I think everyone's had their chance.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to
No,
move forward.
I would argue you've had way more than your chance.
All right. Are we ready to deliberate? Do we have a motion?
I make a motion, we close the hearing to any more public discussion and deliberate on the merits of the case.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. No more, unless we ask you questions, you're not allowed to comment. Does anybody want to say anything? I've got,
So we aren't considering the other two?
no, we're
They're
considering
totally
this
out.
particular
Just
order.
this one?
Correct.
Got it, just want to make sure.
Yes.
Just on this particular incident, November 13th?
That's-
Yes.
Okay. Well, my comments are, credibility is everything here, and we have two very disparate scenarios. And I mean, they're diametrically opposed. I'm looking for something that I can grab onto that I feel is objective when it comes to this particular case. And while we're not really here to discuss previous incidents, it came up from both parties constantly. There was one piece of evidence that did come up that was, in my opinion, objective, and that is the fact that, by law, the emergency room has to report to the police and animal control a bite. So this is not a he said, she said. This is an objective emergency room doing what the state law requires and reported it, which is what triggered one of these particular incidents. So from that standpoint, that
Who's
is...
to say whose dog it is?
So from that standpoint, that's the only piece of objective information I can cling to right now, because these stories just don't match up at all.
I would say that if you pair that with the fact that the dog is, there's no dispute that the dog was off leash and was at least 50 feet, if not 100 feet away, that it's hard to determine that, at least at 100 feet away, that dog was not doing anything. I mean, especially if it was going the opposite way, that you couldn't see what that dog was doing in its face at 100 feet away. And I have a hard time with the previous statement, or what's in fact about the dog from the hospital, from the bite prior, it makes me leery to move forward with not keeping this where we were.
So we are considering that incident?
As I'm considering it
That's my
as a
question.
background, we were not going to adjudicate that. It's not a separate. It can be looked at as a history of the dog, in my opinion. So there's a factual. We have a bite that was attributed to that dog that went through the hospital. We're not considering this dog dangerous because of that bite, but it shows a history with that animal. That's how I view it. Am I wrong?
No, but I don't think you're absolutely wrong at all, Tom. I've read all the affidavits.
I did too.
And here's my thoughts, that looking at the incident of the 13th, we've got two very credible stories that are diametrically opposed. We don't have any real objective evidence for the issue on the 13th. We just have a he said, he said classic. He said, she said. So what I pull back on is what this commission is charged with, and we're charged with protecting public safety. That's our job. And in a situation like this, where we've got two very credible witnesses, and not looking at history, but just looking strictly at a he said, she said, I think we have to consider erring on the side of protecting public safety, because that's our job. Pure and simple, that's our job. And with that, that's why I'm having thoughts that we probably need to uphold the order for no other reason than we can't ferret out exactly what happened between 9 and 11 o'clock on November 13th. These witnesses are very credible on both sides. They've presented good evidence that this is a great dog, and we've heard evidence this dog's got a history of biting. We got to put all that aside, and we have to protect the public interest, the public safety. And since we have no real hard evidence one way or the other, that's how I'm leaning. And that would be my motion, that we move to uphold the order
Do we have a second?
for those reasons.
I would second that motion.
Second? All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Do you want these back, Mr. O'Neill?
Yes, please, thank you. Well,
We
they
need to
become
keep-
part of the record or no?
We need to keep one for evidence, I believe. Tiffany,
If you don't need them all, then we'll take
one.